We all have them, every single day. They're that invisible force that can make a good day feel amazing, or a tough day feel, well, impossible. They are, of course, our emotions. And while they feel so deeply personal, they actually follow a fascinating and universal script. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain and really get into the psychology of what we feel and why.
I mean, think about it for a second. How is it that you can look at a total stranger's face and know, just like that they're happy or angry? And why does a feeling like fear come with such a real physical punch, that racing heart, that jolt? These are the kinds of questions we're digging into, trying to figure out if our feelings are born in our bodies, our minds, or maybe in some kind of intricate dance between the two.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics. What even is an emotion? Then we'll look at the universal feelings we all seem to share. From there, we'll dive into the great psychological debates about how we feel, and we'll wrap up by asking a pretty tough question. Can you even measure something so personal?
All right, let's take things off with the most basic question of all. Before we can get to the why and the how, we really have to agree on the what. So what exactly is an emotion?
The word itself actually gives us a huge clue. It comes from this Latin word emovere, which literally means to stir up or to move. And that's just a perfect description, isn't it? An emotion is this brief but pretty intense stirred-up state that, well, it moves us to respond to something that matters to us.
But here's the thing, that stirred-up state, it's not just one thing. It's more like a complex package deal. It involves your body, like a racing heart. It involves your mind, the thoughts and interpretations you have about what's going on. Then there's the subjective feeling itself, that raw experience of joy or sadness. You also have the visible expression, like a smile or a frown. And finally, your behavioral reaction, what you actually decide to do about it.
Okay, so we toss around words like emotion, mood, and feeling all the time, right? But in psychology, they're actually super specific. Think of it like this. That sudden jolt of anger you get when a car cuts you off. That's an emotion. It's brief, it's intense, and it has a very clear cause. But that kind of grumpy, irritable state you're in all morning for no real reason, that's a mood. It's longer and a lot less specific. And the simple, raw experience of pleasantness or unpleasantness that's underneath both of those, that's the feeling.
Okay, so we've got a working definition. Now let's dig into the basic emotional toolkit that we all come equipped with. Turns out some emotions seem to be hardwired right into our human DNA.
And the main person we have to thank for this is a psychologist named Paul Ekman. He was building on some of Charles Darwin's old ideas, and in the 1970s, he did this absolutely groundbreaking research. He wanted to know, are emotions something we learn from our culture, or are they biological, something universal to all humans?
And what he discovered, it was absolutely mind-blowing. He found that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, from a massive city to a tiny isolated tribe, the facial expressions for anger, happiness, surprise, disgust, sadness, and fear are made and understood by everyone. This is some of the most powerful evidence we have that these core emotions are just a fundamental part of our evolutionary inheritance.
So, what's the point? Why did we even evolve to have these things? Well, they serve some really crucial functions. First, they get us ready for immediate action. That feeling of fear instantly primes your body to either fight or run away from danger. Second, they help shape our future behavior. The pleasure you get from succeeding makes you want to do that thing again. And third, they are a huge part of social communication, telling other people exactly how we feel without us having to say a single word.
Okay, so we know what they are and why we have them, but how does a feeling actually happen? From start to finish. Let's break down the process.
See, an emotion isn't just one single moment. It's more like a domino effect, a chain reaction. So imagine you hear a sudden, loud bang. First comes cognitive appraisal. You instantly size it up. Is that a threat? That leads to a subjective experience, that feeling of fear. Then you feel an urge to act, maybe to hide or to go see what it was. At the exact same time, your body kicks into gear with internal changes, like your heart pounding. Your face makes an expression of shock. And finally, you have a response to that emotion. Maybe you take a deep breath to try and calm down. It's this whole sequence of events.
All right, but this is where it gets really, really interesting. For more than 100 years, psychologists have been arguing about the exact order of that process. It's the ultimate chicken or the egg question. What comes first, the bodily feeling or the mental thought? Let's dive into these great debates.
This quote, this captures the absolutely wild idea from William James and Carl Lang. Now, common sense tells us we see a bear, we feel afraid, and then we run. The James Lange theory flips that completely on its head. It argues that we see the bear, our body just automatically reacts by running and trembling, and it's our awareness of those physical changes that is the feeling of fear.
Now, a couple of other researchers, Walter Cannon and Philip Bard, well, they weren't buying it. They pointed out that lots of different emotions cause the exact same physical responses. A racing heart could be fear, sure, but it could also be excitement. So their theory said that when you see that bear, your brain sends out two signals at the exact same time. One goes to your cortex, creating the feeling of fear, and the other goes to your body, triggering the physical reaction. They happen in parallel, not one causing the other.
And then along came Schachter and Singer with what felt like a brilliant compromise. They agreed, yeah, our physical arousal is kind of generic, but they added a super important second piece, a cognitive label. Their two-factor theory says we feel that physical arousal and then we immediately scan our environment to figure out why we're feeling it. So the emotion we end up feeling is a product of both that physical arousal and the label we give it based on our situation.
Okay, so let's just do a quick recap to see how these all stack up. For James Lange, the body's reaction causes the feeling. For Cannon Bard, they happen at the same time. Schachter Singer says it's two steps, physical arousal plus a mental label. Then you have the facial feedback idea, which suggests your expression itself can influence the feeling. And for Lazarus, it all goes back to that initial cognitive appraisal. The big takeaway here is that each theory points to a different part of the process as being the real starting point, the origin of the feeling.
And that brings us to our last big question. And honestly, it might be the trickiest one of all. If emotions are so complicated and so personal, can we ever really measure them scientifically?
So when it comes to actually measuring emotions, psychologists basically have two main tools in their toolbox. The first is to look at objective physical signs, things like carefully coding tiny facial expressions or using a polygraph to track heart rate and breathing. The other way is much more direct. You just ask people how they feel using questionnaires and rating scales.
But of course, neither of these methods is perfect, not by a long shot. It's tough to report on mixed emotions. I mean, how do you rate feeling happy and sad at the same time? And we can't always trust what people say. Sometimes people report what they think they're supposed to feel. And as for the polygraph, well, it's not a lie detector. It only measures physical arousal, which could easily be caused by the stress of the test itself, not by telling a lie.
So let's end with a really powerful idea that kind of brings everything full circle. We've seen how emotions involve our bodies and our thoughts, but that facial feedback hypothesis, it flips the whole script. It suggests the link goes both ways, that the simple physical act of smiling can actually start to make you feel a bit happier. And that leaves us with this provocative thought. If our outer expression can shape our inner world, how much influence do we really have over our own emotional lives? Maybe the next time you're feeling a little down, just try a smile. The answer might actually surprise you.